So Shavuot is the perfect holiday to talk about intermarriage. And although every day is a day for me to talk about intermarriage, it's really been significant in my professional life and then in my personal life for almost 40 years now. Both my master's degree and my doctoral work studied different aspects of intermarriage. In my master's work, I studied the experience of being intermarried, and my doctoral dissertation talked about clergy who were willing to meet the needs of intermarrying families and couples, including working with clergy from other traditions. So whether or not intermarried Jewish communal workers are good role models has been an issue in the Jewish community for some time now. And you may expect that my response to this is different from others. I'm going to take you on a Cliff Notes version of my personal journey and how I've come to have an open and welcoming view of intermarriage, and why I believe that secular humanistic Jewish leaders are, in fact, very positive role models for the majority of Jews today. So the story of Ruth, the book of the Bible that we read on Shavuot, says a lot about both intermarriage and who is a Jew. The story opens when a man, his wife, and 2 sons from Bethlehem moved to Moab to escape a famine. The sons marry Moabites, non-Jewish women. When the husband and the 2 sons die, Naomi, the matriarch, chooses to move back to Bethlehem. And she tells her daughters-in-law to stay in Moab. But Ruth refuses, and she utters those famous lines, "Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge, and your people shall be my people." Ruth asserts her desire to join the Jewish people, and no one tells her no. Just like secular humanistic Judaism, which says a Jew is a person of Jewish descent, or any person who declares themselves to be a Jew and who identifies with the history, ethical values, culture, civilization, community, and fate of the Jewish people. So as many of us know, Ruth goes on to marry Boaz, a Jew, and becomes the great-grandmother of King David. She, a Moabite by birth and a Jew by choice and self-identification. So the approach to intermarriage and who is a Jew, as described in the story of Ruth, seems quite like the way secular humanistic Jews approach both intermarriage and conversion or adoption. As the rabbi of SHJ, I speak to at least 2 or 3 people a week who are interested in becoming Jewish. And I'm honored to welcome more than a few of them every month. The requirements to become a Jew in the SHJ's program, in the Society's program, are articulate your identity with the Jewish people and your desire to become a member of the community. It's that simple, and one of the more satisfying aspects of my work, to tell you. The question of who qualify as positive role models for today's Jewish community is a very personal one. I know what it's like to be marginalized as a Jew, as a woman, a humanist, and as an intermarried rabbi. After my bat mitzvah in a Reformed congregation, I became more and more interested in Judaism. It was the first time I thought about becoming a rabbi. I went on to become the Judaism chair for B'nai B'rith Youth Organization, and in college, I majored in psychology and Near Eastern studies. So my last year of college, what am I going to do next? I decided to apply to Hebrew Union College, the Reform Seminary, to become a rabbi. You can imagine my surprise, or maybe not, when I received a letter from the college informing me that women could not be rabbis. Who knew? Who knew? Probably everybody else in Judaism but me. So After I divorced my first husband, I met and fell in love with a man, Catholic by birth and humanist by behavior, and we married in 1990. I was already a madricha, a ceremonial leader in secular humanistic Judaism, and no one told me that I would have to abandon my right to be clergy. In 1997, I applied to and entered the IISHJ rabbinic program, the International Institute program. Being married to a man who was not Jewish was not an issue. And at that time, only 2 rabbinic seminaries in North America accepted candidates that were dating or married to non-Jews. On the one hand, I heard criticism from the Jewish community suggesting that intermarried Jewish communal leaders were not positive role models. And on the other hand, couples that I worked with or met in my professional work felt a connection to me. They knew I understood and could empathize with them. They felt I might have some insight that maybe others did not have. So my husband and I respect each other's backgrounds and family traditions. We do share in both, but as you might expect, we do more Jewish than other. It's kind of an occupational necessity for me. And it is how we have chosen to live our lives. Paul will share some of the statistical information about intermarriage with you, but suffice it to say that over 70% of Jews getting married today are intermarrying. Rabbis and Jewish communal leaders who are intermarried are excellent role models for today's Jews, and we are even stronger role models for those of us who are serving the secular humanistic Jewish community. We are intermarried and we are fully immersed in the Jewish community. Both of those things are possible. Paul.
And I want to start with a statement, which is that intermarriage is good, period, no strings attached. And I say that almost as a trigger warning, because when I present on intermarriage, I hope that there will be intermarried people in the audience. And just from my own experience as an intermarried person, an intermarried Jew, there has been so much negativity toward intermarriage from the organized Jewish community that as a Jewish communal professional, I want to make sure that I'm making clear from the get-go that my position is intermarriage is good because we celebrate love. I'm incredibly proud to be part of a movement where we celebrate all forms of adult consensual love, whether it's in marriage, intermarriage, not marriage. If you're looking for love and you find it, we want to celebrate that. If you're not looking for love, we want to celebrate that too. It's as long as you're happy. So, and of course, I hope it's clear when we say intermarriage, we're talking about somebody who's Jewish marrying somebody who isn't Jewish. Just want to make sure we define our terms. So that negativity that has happened for so long in the Jewish community, that maybe it's in decline, it's still there in a lot of ways. And I think a big piece of it is who represents the intermarried within the organized Jewish community. And I've long thought about this disconnect between Jewish communal professionals and, those who work in the synagogue movement or the JCCs, Jewish community centers, Jewish federations, compared to the Jews at large, the Jews on the ground. And some of you may have seen this past week that the Pew Research Center put out a once a decade study of American Jewry. Did you see that? I can't see you nodding your heads yes, but I know that you are. On Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to do a deep dive on what Pew found about rising Jewish secularity and how that affects Jewish political positions. The bit.ly for that, if you want to register, is bit.ly.com/SHJPew, P-E-W. I'll put it in the chat momentarily. But Today, in my limited time, I'd want to drill down on what Pew found about intermarriage, because before we can even talk about who represents the intermarried, I want to give you a sense of just how big intermarriage really is. So how big is intermarriage? Pew only gives the individual rates, and they found that 42% of all married Jews today in America are married to someone who isn't Jewish. And as with their last study in 2013, as with the Jewish communal surveys of 2001 and 1990, they all only give the individual rates. And that has been a tremendous frustration to me because it doesn't describe what actually happened. They also break it down by decade, and they found that 61% of Jews who married in the past 10 years had intermarried. Miriam had mentioned 70%. It's 72% of non-Orthodox Jews who have intermarried over the past 10 years. And that's what they found in 2013. So the narrative that they put out is that intermarriage is holding steady, right? That it's leveled off. And if you understand how intermarriage rates work, it's an absurd statement because it doesn't describe the results. And what is the results of intermarriage is how many households are created, and they don't provide the household rates. But if you look at a 42% individual rate, that translates to a nearly 60% couples rate or household rate, right? So right now in America, among all households with at least one Jewish spouse, almost 60% of them are intermarried and only 40% are in-married. And these numbers are from the last Pew survey, and I haven't gone back and adjusted them yet. But basically, the darker green is intermarried households, and there are hundreds of thousands of more intermarried households in America today. And that's not the story that's told to the organized Jewish community or by the organized Jewish community. And why does it matter? Because it's the households that produce the next Jewish generation. And I'm the one who had to come up with this because nobody else was putting this number out there. And I see that Karen McGinnity is going to talk later, and she, of course, can either back me up or dispute it. She knows the numbers, but I had to figure this out myself with my BA in political science and communications. What they will tell you is that intermarried households have a much lower affiliation rates. In this graph, they talk about synagogue membership, and only 13% of intermarried households are affiliated with a synagogue right now, compared to 60% of in-married households, which seems like a lot. Seems like a very big difference. But if you dig deeper into Pew, you can see one of the reasons is that most Jews and a significant majority of intermarried Jews say that being Jewish is not about religion, that it is mainly about culture and ancestry. And if you want to email me for the PowerPoints, I'll send them to you. But basically, I put in the box over here those who said that being Jewish is mainly about either ancestry or culture, or ancestry and culture. But they didn't say that it's mainly about religion. And among intermarried households, no surprise for those of us who are involved in it, almost 70% say it's not about religion. So synagogue affiliation rates, there's a disconnect there. Nevertheless, despite only 13% of intermarried households being synagogue members, you've got 70% of them raising children with some Jewish identity. And again, this becomes controversial because of the way Pew does the numbers, and I'll drill down on this on Tuesday. They break the Jewish community between Jews by religion and Jews of no religion, which of course is very interesting to those of us in secular humanistic Judaism. But in some way, Judaism, Jewish culture, Jewish identity exists in 70% of intermarried households. That suggests a tremendous amount of potential for the organized Jewish community to go reach these folks, serve them, engage them, share with them the benefits of being part of an organized Jewish community. So here's the big reveal of why I think there's such a big disconnect between intermarried households who are not engaging with the organized Jewish community and the approach that the organized Jewish community takes toward them. And this is from a different study, a survey of 5,000 Jewish communal professionals in 2014 found that only 10% of them were intermarried. So compared to 42%, this is an individual rate again, compared to 42% of all married Jews, only 10% of married Jewish communal professionals are intermarried. So when I think about the growing interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion training that's happening in the organized Jewish community, which is a very good thing that is becoming a greater awareness, I would love to see some of the organizations in the Jewish community also ask themselves, what percentage of our board members are intermarried? And get it up to 42%. Try to make it the same percentage that's out there in the organized Jewish community. My understanding is we're nowhere near that. And I think a lot of people in the organized Jewish community would say it's self-selecting, which is really, not what I think is happening, particularly in communities and organizations where there are real barriers to participation for intermarried households. So I will end on the quote that Miriam already read, but I'll put it up here for those of you who are visual learners, that came out in 1988 by the International Federation for Secular and Humanistic Judaism, that a Jew is a person of Jewish descent, or any person who declares himself or herself or themselves to be a Jew and who identifies with the history, ethical value, culture, civilization, community, and fate of the Jewish people. In other words, let's open the doors for anybody who wants to identify themselves as Jewish. And even if they don't, I would add, and friends and allies are part of our community. And like I said, I'm very proud to be part of a movement that takes this approach. And I think one of my roles and one of the roles of our movement is to advocate for this approach. I think we were way ahead of the curve. I think folks are catching up to it now. I think we need to put it out there even more to recognize that there's a tremendous opportunity. Let's go out and reach and serve these folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Great as always. And Dr. Karen McGinnity did endorse your numbers as you were speaking.
Check is in the mail, Karen.
Right, exactly.